hundreds of action webtoons in different platforms. And seriously, it feels like every single protagonist in an action webtoon is overpowered or becomes overpowered at some point. Having a main character or MC that is overpowered does not automatically mean that they suck, of course. It strongly depends on how they are written. In this video, we're going to focus on the type of overpowered or OP MCs that make us cringe. Although the video coverage is more on the MCs from action webtoons, they may be applicable to OP MCs from other media like anime and novels as well. But please take note, the titles featured in the video aren't necessarily bad or good examples, okay? We'll focus on the trope, not on the titles which have them. Besides, any overused trope is not an issue as long as it's used well after all. But if the OP main character is written in an unimpressive manner, then that really sucks. Are you familiar with the term Mary Sue? In case not, a Mary Sue is a type of female character who is depicted as unrealistically lacking in flaws or weaknesses. This type of fictional character is shunned upon. Well, normally it's like that. However, a lot of authors and readers, whether consciously or not, embrace such characters for idealized self-insertion. But of course, that's not always the case. Anyway, the male counterpart of this is the Marty Stu, which is also referred to as a Gary Stu or Gary Stu. I'm more used to Gary Stu. So, a Gary Stu, by this definition, is a seemingly perfect character with no flaws, or is someone who overpowers other characters. Sounds familiar? I find it strange that not a lot of people point out that majority of the OP protagonists in webtoons are basically Gary Stus. They get the best skills, the exclusive privileges, and other special perks. With that, they usually fall under the chosen one trope. They get those things usually out of some luck after all. Naturally, they are or become the most powerful being in their universe, and the side characters are pretty much non-existent. So in other words, there are two main issues with the Gary Stu. One is being perfect, and the other is being overpowered. Protagonists in action webtoons usually don't have any weaknesses. If ever they do, it will most likely be just some sick mother or a weak younger sister or that useless comrade. So nope, they're not counted. Besides, in just a few chapters or panels, they'll certainly find a way to overcome it moving forward. Everything that happens always goes according to their plans or their whims. Even if they do nasty or immoral stuff, it's depicted as something cool or justified. So, they get away with everything simply because they are the main character. No wonder villain-like protagonists are becoming a trend recently. The other problem is that they are overpowered. Simply put, they have too much power. They're pretty much omnipotent. They're basically gods. Why bother making them human in the first place? I think I know. It's probably because these types of characters are often seen in power fantasies. For those not familiar with the term power fantasy, here's a nice short description that I found. A power fantasy is a derogatory term for stories where the hero is a stand-in for the reader and displays an improbable amount of dominance. It's seen as wish fulfillment. Check those keywords: dominance and wish fulfillment. In simple words, it just serves to satisfy one's desire to be dominant over others. It's a form of escapism, which I think isn't really that bad. We need a bit of that sometimes. Well, actually, there's nothing wrong with simply having an overpowered character. But an overpowered character that is written terribly usually comes along with the following writing flaws as well. First is that there's little or lack of character growth. Some might argue that there are many protagonists who earn their strength since they worked hard for it, which is true. Many webtoons indeed have the weak to strong trope wherein the MC would struggle and suffer at the beginning before attaining that ultimate power. However, as soon as they reach the threshold, they will just be the same as the rest. They're gonna end up as among the strongest, if not the strongest already, in just around 20 chapters by average. And of course, what more can we develop to a character that's already perfect? After the training arc ends, if there is any, there isn't going to be much difference in their personality, maturity, wisdom, and feelings. Most of the time, when they become OP, they'll just become the quiet or antisocial type. Another annoying thing when there's an overpowered MC is that there's no challenge or tension. I'm not counting those boss fights wherein the MC will struggle just a bit in the climax or at the beginning, but will win in the end anyway. In relation to that, it will definitely be rare for there to be any setbacks or defeats. Since main characters are unstoppable, they will win every single time. Only the MC. It's making them predictable and repetitive, hence boring. It will be interesting to see them lose at least once. I'm not counting the earlier chapters when they are still very weak. There's nothing shameful if they have to retreat. It will be dramatic if they fail to reach their goal. And it will pull heartstrings if they lose those important to them. I'm not being sadistic, but seeing the main character fail from time to time will be a nice reminder that they are actually imperfect humans. They've got to have vulnerabilities and weaknesses. They may excel in one or more aspects, but they could completely suck at many other things. It will be interesting if they have dependency on other characters. They could even experience being a side character from time to time. After all, they don't always need the spotlight since they're the main character anyway. They don't need to have everything and be good at everything either. I understand that there has to be something about the main character to make them special and interesting to the readers. But is it too much to ask to make it balanced with other characters? The other characters can be overpowered too, right? Or at least get some of those overpowered items and abilities. But apparently, it seems to be too much to ask. Because, sadly, if there is a terribly written overpowered MC, the rest of the characters just become insignificant side characters. It hurts more when they happen to be more interesting than the main character. But no! The spotlight only belongs to the MC apparently. Since the MC does everything better, then they have no other role but to be rescued by the MC or to cheer the MC. It's easy to ignore and forget about them since they are made invisible and useless. Of course, along with the supporting characters, you cannot expect villains to have any depth either. They might appear intimidating, but that's only at the beginning. Thanks to some miracle, the MC will defeat them anyway. Most of the time, they're defeated effortlessly. Or maybe there's some effort, but just a bit. Because sometime later, the MC will get some power up to gain the advantage over the villain anyway. It's not fair, but who cares about being fair to villains? So yeah, that pretty much makes the villains really pathetic too. don't expect them to win ever. And of course, they will be completely forgettable. Exceptions will be if they become an ally later, but that's temporary too. So yeah, their only purpose is just that to make it appear that the MC has some challenge somehow. But if paired with an overpowered MC, that's a complete lie. Another thing that I really hate is women objectification. This is more common to titles with perverted fan service or a harem. Of course, the main character will have plenty of girls falling in love with him, whether he's good looking or not. Don't expect much relationship development, much less for those girls to have any personality. They mainly serve as love interests or useless burdens who do not contribute and who need to be rescued most of the time. In other words, they are so annoying to the point that even women will be embarrassed to have the same gender as those garbage. Anyway, these three tropes are closely connected to one another actually. If the other characters are not given any value or significance, then you cannot expect justice to be done to these side characters. All the glory and attention is on the main character alone after all. And that's very sad. But oh well. Although a number of people also complain about these things, there are still lots of titles with such characters and tropes. Well, I suppose it's because there's also a demand for such things. I've seen readers who are very satisfied with such, and there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I don't really mind overpowered MCs either, especially if they are in a parody or a satire anyway. Such series may seem ridiculous, but you'll be surprised that despite the silly stuff, they are actually written better than most of the crap out there. In a nutshell, overpowered main characters are usually just the embodiment of nothing but action, in hopes to satisfy those who wish to become dominant while their real life is a misery, probably. But the overpowered protagonist trope itself isn't really bad, especially in the hands of a terrific or careful writer. Believe it or not, even if there are lots of disappointing action webtoon protagonists out there are also plenty of good ones. They are just not easy to find. But of course, what makes a well-written OP protagonist or just a protagonist in general may be different to many people. It's quite subjective. But in my opinion, we can summarize that by just doing the opposite of what I had mentioned earlier. There's character growth and development, and the main character faces challenges and there's tension in almost every battle. They could surprise the readers with the creativity of how the main character overcomes those obstacles. And occasionally, although very powerful, there are times when the main character will get defeated or is overpowered by another. This will naturally result to opportunities for other characters to shine. Of course, I'm not saying that side characters are usually more interesting than the main character. There was a particular webtoon which gave so many moments to the side characters, but they are apparently so annoying that I'd rather go with the stereotypical OP protagonist. Anyway, it will be great if the villains are more remarkable than they appear. The good ones are those which give emotional impact. And no, they don't necessarily have to be good-looking psychos that they get a huge fan base. And lastly, equal rights and respect to female characters will be much appreciated. The era wherein female characters are too dependent to the male ones in order to get out of trouble are over. Even Disney movies are trying to stop that. So, it should be the same with webtoons. More so if they are created by women. These points are just some of the things which I think can make a decent protagonist, at least, whether overpowered or not. I've thought of more, but maybe I'll elaborate them in another video. Anyway, how about you? What do you think about overpowered main characters in webtoons? Do you agree or disagree with what I had mentioned? What are the things that you dislike or like about overpowered protagonists? It will be great if you share your thoughts in the comments section. There are other things to talk about overpowered MCs or just with webtoon tropes in general. For more content like this, you can check out this video or my webtoon tropes playlist. And as always, likes and shares would also be highly appreciated. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care!